I write jazz. See, people think of me in a way that I'm not. They make me into what I'm not. They categorize you. They categorize me. I'm fundamentally a poet and a writer who's also got some political beliefs. I'm not a politician who also writes. And they want to challenge me on a literary level. If they want to challenge me, let them write something better than that. It's in God, faith, and reason. This is not a book of preachy. This is a book of stories.
Well, exactly. And what I get from that is death's the great equalizer, and all of our shared humanity and struggles together unify us. And if you tell stories about life and death and friends, it brings everybody together. Some Holocaust survivor or some guy with Nazi sympathies. That's why they want to keep us divided and dumb the culture down, because literature like that points out real feelings we had unifies us in our humanity and our life and our death. And Michael Savage, what a treat. God, Faith, and Reason. Michael Savage, #1 New York Times bestselling author. I cannot wait to read this book. In fact, once the kids go to bed tonight, I'm going to start getting into it. But then I'll until 2 in the morning reading the whole thing. I will get it read by this weekend, because the more I burrow into the mental illness of the left, they're a bunch of people that want to be alphas, but they don't want the responsibility. And they're not real intellectuals. They want to say they're the intellectuals, then create an authoritarian system where all thought has to be approved by them. That's called a cult. And they are waging war with any stable civilization because they want to conquer it instead of joining with it. It's just a bunch of betas getting together and trying to be alphas, is my view. And Michael
That's
Savage,
nice.
who just joined us, was getting into...
I like the Brave New World analogy. Alpha, beta, gamma, delta. I think they're more like deltas. You look at guys like Wolf Blitzer. Do you actually think he's even a beta? These people are fakers. There's nothing there. There's no education. There's no knowledge. There's no history. Or you bring others up. Well, what have they actually achieved? Who are they? What have they written that anyone will remember? Alex, I have to interject right now because I believe my book today, this one is my most important book. I think it's the definitive book I've written that could lead America back to the standards we hold in esteem. It may sound too megalomaniacal for most people, but you know what? So what? I've got to say it. If I won't, who will? If I'm not for myself, who will be? If I'm only for myself, who am I?
But it's no brag, just fact. If not for people like you and a few others, Matt Drudge, Donald Trump, let's say it, myself and a few others, if we weren't here, we would have lost. So we have to admit we are the resistance. Our audience is really the key. And so it's true. We would be totally defeated if it wasn't for us. And that means our audience. So let's just, we're not taking credit. We're saying we've got the munitions that will blow the enemy up.
We'd be out of business. Alex, I want to do something for you and your audience, which is this. You know, there's a lot of books. There's a lot of hackneyed writing. This is my magnus opus. It's based on my entire life quest. Can I read you a half of a page?
Hey, please take over. Please do the next segment. You've got the floor. Go ahead.
I was at a funeral for a friend's father. And I had told a friend of mine who was an American, you know, a World War II hero, who was a bit of a Nazi. I loved him anyway. We were friends. We argue all the time, but we had a mutual respect for each other. And we'd fight, argue, whatever. So my friend's father dies. Henry had survived Auschwitz. They cut 3 of his fingers off in a saw. He was an extremely bitter man. So he dies. And so I go to the funeral. And my friend, the Nazi sympathies, was Bob. So I'm going to read from there. It's a half a page. So Bob shut his mouth that night many years ago. And as I've said, he tends to harbor certain Nazi sentiments. So when I told him about Murray's mutilated hand, I wasn't surprised at his lack of immediate pitying sounds. But I like a challenge, so I went on. Murray never cried about his hand, I told Bob. He came to America with Florence, who he met somewhere over there and had a family, namely Joel. He was full of life, this Murray. He was a big drinker. He loved women. He beat his son with a strap, but he was a big personality. Bob nodded at that. I think the anti-Semite in him liked the never cried and beat his son parts of Murray, so I proceeded with my funeral story. I had lost touch with my friend Joel for a few years. His wife threw him out for beating her and at least one of their daughters. And he was in one of his episodic hidings, this time from the sheriff's department. They were after him for his house and all his earnings to give to his greedy wife. Somehow I heard his father, Murray, had cancer and was dying. I called his mother and went over a few days later. We brought over a bag of groceries, you know, French bread, a pound of sliced turkey, some wine, some vegetables, and a quart of milk. The usual stuff you bring when someone's sick, poor, and housebound. Florence and Joel greeted us at the door of their little one-bedroom apartment. I always liked it there, remembering the holidays in my own house when I was a boy. Having been in the antique business like my deceased father, Benny, the place was filled with oversized, high-quality furniture and paintings. Murray was in a bathrobe in a gigantic English armchair, shrunken but beautiful in a way. He pulled me close and said, Michael, Michael, I remember when you took to they let him out, probably to die at home. And 3 or 4 days later, boom, it's over like that. Joel told me he had been sick most of the night, vomiting, probably those toxic chemicals. He forces himself up and says, Joel, she's there on your left, the angel of death. Joel gets scared. He says, Pop, there's nobody here but me and Mom. Murray stares at the big chair across the small room. To your right, Joel, on the couch. There, there. He stands up, starts to walk across the room, and collapses. I can see that even the anti-Semite Bob is tearing up, wiping the tears from his face. Listen, you racist bastard, I said to him, looking at that hole in the ground with Murray's casket so bare, and hearing the rabbi's ancient chant and watching the young Mexican gravediggers move by that chant, I became reminded of my own hole waiting. I never knew where I wanted to live, I whispered to Joel's friend from Israeli intelligence, and I sure don't know where I want to die. We never know where we're going to die, he reminded me with a 70s rocker's cackle and grin. That's it. I write jazz. See, people think of me in a way that I'm not. They make me into what I'm not. They categorize you. They categorize me. I'm fundamentally a poet and a writer who's also got some political beliefs. I'm not a politician who also writes. And they want to challenge me on a literary level. If they want to challenge me, let them write something better than that. It's in God, faith, and reason. This is not a book of preachy. This is a book of stories. Well,
exactly. And what I get from that is death's the great equalizer, and all of our shared humanity and struggles together unify us. And if you tell stories about life and death and friends, it brings everybody together. Some Holocaust survivor or some guy with Nazi sympathies. That's why they want to keep us divided and dumb the culture down, because literature like that points out real feelings we had unifies us in our humanity and our life and our death.
The division is what we're talking about, and we have to remember that as the true resistance. Isn't it interesting how smart the devil is? They take we who are the resistance and make themselves into resistors.
Exactly.
I see all these dumb idiots driving around here in San Francisco with the bumper stickers that say resist.
And you've been saying, and I've been saying, we are the resistance for decades. Suddenly they're the resistance. No, we haven't taken the country back. We're just beginning to pull the pus out.
Well, I understand all of it. The hatred for Donald Trump is not really a hatred for Donald Trump. It's a hatred for white, heterosexual, Christian males. We know that. Everyone knows that. It's because he's a white, heterosexual, Christian male. It's not because he's a left-winger or a right-winger. They just wanted somebody other than a white, heterosexual, Christian male in the White House. Period. End of story.
I was going to ask you that if you do one more little segment after the break. Now suddenly it's a coming out, not mainly by minorities, it's mainly white people and others saying whites are evil, get rid of them. If you have a white baby, abort it. Major feminist magazines. This isn't just a few people. The left is really showing us that they're anti-Christian, anti-white to a Hitlerian level, but reverse. But Hitler wasn't a Christian. He was anti-Christian.
This is how it started. This is what they do. They demonize us first. Then they march us into the camps, and then they kill us. I'm warning people out there. It's much worse than they think. It starts with an idea. The Holocaust started with an idea written by a French anti-Semite a long time before the ovens were actually built, a long time before the Zyklon B was actually manufactured. I'm warning everybody listening to me. These professors are the true evil Nazis of our time. These must be weeded out like the poison that they are. And the universities that harbor these evil, failed intellects must be called on the carpet as well. I blame the universities. I don't blame these marginal psychotics. Pol Pot, how did Pol Pot start? A little tiny guy in Cambodia. He went to Paris to study Marxism. He became enthralled with Marxism. He came back and introduced Marxism in Cambodia. He put together the 13-year-olds, the 14-year-olds. He gave them the red bandanas. He called them the Red Brigades. What did the Red Brigades do? The Khmer Rouge. They went and they started by humiliating the middle class. Their own race now. Doctors, lawyers, engineers, architects.
Hold on, do one more segment. Explain the process of how they get a group ready to be exterminated, and you see it again exactly being followed formulaically, and then you hear the weathermen and others saying, we're going to round up the Christians and conservatives, we're going to kill you. After 4 years of research, the next big game changer has arrived. Z-Shield, toxic metal and chemical defense support. It's made in the USA. It's filled with known compounds from nature that are absolutely associated with detoxifying the body, and it supports the Infowar. It is a classical 360 win. We're changing the world. Now it's time to change our bodies with Z-Shield at InfoWarsLife.com.